when it comes to texture, context seems to be extremely important to people. So when what I've encountered at least is when people are thinking about the gristly, let's say, fat on meat, most people will say, oh, I don't like the flavor. But actually, it's the fat that gives flavor to the meat, so they do enjoy that. Well, then they'll say, oh, well, it's actually the texture. If you give them little gummy bear sweets or whatever it may be, they like chewy, soft kind of textures. So what is it about context that's so important to our enjoyment among all the senses?
Well, I think context is terribly important, internal and external. So there's the internal context of how you personally are constituted and will react to texture in particular. And then there's the context of acceptability. What are the clues given to you by shape or color, or even just a label and a description that make what you're eating acceptable? As you said, if you give people isovaleric acid and ethyl butyrate to smell together, if you tell them it's Parmesan cheese, it'll be delicious. If you don't tell them that and tell them it's a nasty smell, they'll think it smells of vomit. So we can flip people's hedonic acceptance of what they're smelling by having the right label. That shows labels are terribly important. This is something that Heston Blumenthal found out when he was giving people crab ice cream. They didn't want to eat it because, the idea of crab ice cream, that's wrong. My category is that ice cream should be sweet. It should be, easy. Fish doesn't belong in that category. But when you call it frozen savory bisque, people say, oh, this is delicious. So the very same dish can be changed for you just by changing the label. That's a part of external context. But
so
I also
everything down to, I was going to say everything down to even how you write the menu, how you word the dishes. We're saying that all of this is building, again, that constructing expectations and judgments about what it is that you're going to consume. And then I guess that relates to how congruent and how in context things are.
Yeah, and notice how important descriptions are. When you said, if you have a piece of gristle of fat, people think of it sliding around the mouth and it being very unpleasant. But if you say, gummy bear, chewy, even if it was savory, you'd think, fine. So, gum is fine, gristle is not. Exactly how we're using those predictions of what to expect. But talking about texture, I've begun to think that texture is so important. It's one of the hidden drivers of food acceptability. I mean, if you think of it, this is something that the gastrophysicist Ollie Muritzen has said. Almost every complaint in a restaurant is about the sense of touch. The steak was too tough. The eggs were too runny. The coffee was too cold. The wine was too warm. Think about how temperature, texture, these are things that drive whether we'll have the same product in one condition or another. And Ollie Muritzen also did a wonderful experiment where he takes a cucumber and purifies it, and then with some gum, he makes it into a jelly. And if you use xanthan gum, you can have something pretty flavorless and jellified. And I've tried this too. If blindfold you give people some of this jelly to try, they will say, oh, I don't know what that is. Oh, I'm not sure. It's familiar. I don't know if I like it. And then if you give them a little piece of cucumber and they crunch on it, they say, cucumber. Now, only 8% of the population can tell when it's in a state of jelly that they're tasting cucumber. So it shows you that whether you'll accept a food is whether it has the right texture. And also, I found that eggs are one of those real dividers. If your scrambled eggs are too runny or too firm, it really divides people.
Yeah.
So texture is terribly important for food identification and food acceptability.